All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into CoQ10. That's coenzyme Q10,
Yeah.
and you see it everywhere, right? All kinds of health benefits being advertised for this supplement. And so
hmm
we dug into the research to find out, what's real and what's maybe not so real.
Yeah, absolutely. Does CoQ10 really live up to the hype? And to start off, I think it's helpful to kind of set the stage with what CoQ10 is. It is actually something that our bodies naturally make, and it's really vital. It plays this essential role in how our cells produce energy.
Okay.
And it acts as this antioxidant. And what that means is it helps protect against damage from, these unstable molecules in our bodies. Sometimes it's referred to as oxidative stress.
Right. So it already has these important roles in the body. So of course the question becomes, if we take more, are we going to supercharge ourselves? And I guess maybe let's start with cancer. Does the research suggest that CoQ10 can help prevent or even treat cancer?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's a logical one because, with its antioxidant properties, it would seem like, okay, maybe boosting these antioxidants could play a role in fighting cancer. However, based on the research that's been done, and there have been a number of clinical trials that have looked at this, the current scientific consensus really doesn't support using CoQ10 as a treatment for cancer. The trials just haven't really shown any significant benefits. And so, it seems that simply increasing those CoQ10 levels isn't really getting at, this very complex disease.
Yeah, so it makes sense in theory, but the evidence just isn't there. Okay, well, what about heart health? CoQ10 comes up a lot when people talk about heart health.
It does, yeah. And it's true that CoQ10 is very important for the heart muscle, for it to get the energy it needs to function properly. But when we look at the research, it doesn't seem to actually prevent heart disease. There is some data that suggests it might lower blood pressure a little bit, but these reductions tend to be really small and not, really clinically significant. So, they wouldn't really have a meaningful impact on someone's overall heart health.
So no prevention and only minor, not really important blood pressure changes.
Yeah, that's basically it. And because of that, current medical guidelines don't recommend it as a primary treatment for any kind of heart issue.
Got it. Okay. Well, switching gears a little bit, what about brain health? I remember there was some excitement around CoQ10, maybe a while back about its potential for things like Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, definitely. There was some initial research that, suggested it might be beneficial for neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's. These are really complex diseases, and researchers were looking for anything that might help. But unfortunately, when they did larger clinical trials, the results were kind of disappointing. They weren't able to consistently show that CoQ10 actually slowed down the disease progression or really improved the symptoms all that much.
Okay, so even though those early findings were promising, they didn't really pan out when they, did more research.
Right, exactly. And that's a really important point. Sometimes those early findings can be exciting, but then when you do, the larger, more rigorous trials, things don't always turn out the way you hoped.
Absolutely. Okay, well, another question that comes up a lot is CoQ10 for muscle pain,
hmm
specifically the muscle pain that some people experience when they're taking statin medication.
Right. Yeah, this is a common concern for people who are on statins, and there's definitely this hope that CoQ10 might help ease those aches and pains. But when we look at the clinical trials, the results are actually pretty mixed. There are some that show a little bit of benefit, but most of the well-designed studies haven't found any significant improvement in those muscle symptoms when people take CoQ10.
So kind of a mixed bag there.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's not, doctors aren't generally recommending it for this particular issue.
Right. It's just not, there's just not enough evidence at this point to say that it's really effective.
Yeah. Okay. So, looking at all this research, it seems like the main takeaway is that even though CoQ10 is this, really vital part of our bodies naturally, taking extra CoQ10, in supplement form doesn't really seem to give us these big benefits for these major health concerns.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary. Our bodies are pretty good at regulating our CoQ10 levels on their own, and the research just doesn't really support the idea that, more is always better in this case. It's not like taking vitamin C when you have a cold, for example. It's not going to prevent or treat things like cancer, heart disease, or those neurodegenerative disorders that we talked about.
Right. And I think that's really important for people to understand. There's this sort of common belief that if something's good for you, then more of it must be even better. But that's not always the case.
Yeah, exactly. Our bodies are complex systems, and they have their own ways of maintaining balance.
Right. And so for our listeners, what does all this mean for you? Uh, basically the science is telling us that these hoped for, huge health boosts from CoQ10 supplements, you know, for the conditions we've been talking about, they're basically unproven, or the evidence is just not very reliable.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the most important things that comes up over and over again in this research is, talk to your doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're considering taking CoQ10, talk to your healthcare provider. They can give you personalized advice based on, your specific situation, your health history, any other medications you might be taking. They can help you weigh the potential benefits and risks and figure out if it's really right for you.
Exactly. Okay. Well, I think as we wrap up this deep dive, it's interesting to think about, we've talked about how our bodies naturally produce CoQ10, and the evidence for taking more of it in supplement form, isn't really that strong. So it makes me wonder, why are we so quick to look for these, external solutions for complex health issues, instead of maybe focusing on what our bodies can already do. It's just, it's something to think about. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.